Hey y'all, welcome back to New Slang. I'm music journalist Thomas Mooney. This is episode 186, where I'm joined by Texas singer-songwriter Dallas Burrow. Dallas has a new record coming out at the end of the week, Friday, July 23rd. We caught up a little while back to talk about this self-titled and Bruce Robison produced album. We talk about a host of things here, from songwritings and patience, recording with Bruce, the current Texas songwriter world, Dallas's father, who was also an artist, and the impact he had on Dallas, and how family and relationships have impacted his own brand of storytelling. And of course, there's a lot more in there. I'm gonna actually keep this intro super short because I'm out on vacation, out on a lake, actually southeast of Dallas, of all places. And yeah, anyway, trust me when I say you'll want to grab this new record by Dallas Burrow out this Friday. It's a great one.
Today's presenting partner is our pals over at Desert Door Texas Soto. If you've been listening to New Slang for really any amount of time, you'll know that Desert Door is one of my all-time favorite premium, high-quality spirits. If you haven't or aren't sure what exactly a Soto is, I'm going to let you in on a little secret that's going to up the game on your liquor cabinet. For starters, the best reference point that I can point you to is to think about a tequila or a mezcal. Do you feel that Western desert, that Texas ruggedness? Okay, Soto is like that, but a little bit more refined, smooth, and fragrant. It intrigues the palate and offers these hints of vanilla and citrus. There's an earthiness that often sends me right back to my Trans-Pecos and far west Texas roots. There's plenty to love about Desert Door. For me, it all starts right there. A close second is just how versatile Desert Door really is. You can go full highbrow and experiment with concocting a variety of cocktails that call for muddling fresh fruit, sprigs of thyme, sticks of cinnamon. It's perfect for that world. If you're a little bit more down home, if you've just rolled up the sleeves of your denim Wrangler button-up, it's perfect for that as well. If you're just desiring something that's short and sweet, it hits the mark every time. Desert Door is genuine and authentically West Texan. It's inherently West Texan. They harvest Soto plants out in the wild and are knowledgeable conservationists at heart. That's obviously something incredibly important to me. They shine a light on what makes West Texas special and unique and worth preserving and keeping it safe from exploitation. Right now, you can find Desert Door all over Texas, Colorado, Tennessee, and there's budding numbers in places like New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Georgia. Best thing you can do is to check out desertdoor.com to find where Desert Door is locally. Again, that's desertdoor.com.
Be sure to subscribe to New Slang if you haven't just yet. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and virtually anywhere you listen to podcasts. So give us a 5-star review if you're over on Apple Podcasts. They do go a long way. Be sure to visit the merch store. That would be at newslangpodcast.bigcartel.com. Over there you can get t-shirts, coffee mugs, koozies, all kinds of stuff. Go visit us over there. And yeah, let's get on into it. Here is Dallas Burrow. I think to go back to that first single that you released, the Born Down in Texas.
Yeah.
That is such a greasy kind of blues number right there that just kind of, you feel that, I don't know, like that Louisiana heat in it. You feel that East Texas kind of swampiness.
Sure. Yeah, definitely got a swampy thing going on.
Yeah, I think that's such a great introduction for the record. What where'd that song first kind of stem from? What's the story there?
Well, musically speaking, the inspiration kind of came out of this sort of like jam band that over the past year I kind of was in and out of. During the pandemic, a bunch of musicians around here, I mean, everywhere, but the few around here that I was, buddies with, were all kind of, the ones that had been on the road were off the road, and there'd been some, different living arrangements made for others and stuff like that. So, but the band was called El Saddle, and that's been this kind of side project of this buddy of mine named Cullen Fox, and he plays, his regular gig is in Charlie Crockett's band.
Mm-hmm.
Plays keys and trumpet and accordion and for Charlie, and so it was Cullen's band, but this configuration in particular was was me and Cullen and this other friend of mine named Chad Pope, who had just moved down from Memphis. And Chad is, he's kind of he's a character, man. And like, he's played with Dale Watson some, but really, Chad's kind of a hard dude to pin down. I mean, he's kind of a psychedelic blues guy. And so like, as far as the storyline of the song itself, I was kind of like writing to his story a bit. I mean, him having just come from Memphis and stuff, but also too, like that group El Saddle, we had done a show opening for Dale Watson, and so and Dale was back and forth from Memphis. He just moved back to Texas, I guess, and he and his wife Celine, we were opening for them out some funky little general store up in a little town called Bend, which is outside of Comanche, which is like another nowhere town. But so, I was just thinking about Memphis, and I've, over the years, had the pleasure of spending a fair amount of time in New Orleans myself. And I mean, like, as far as, not to get too heavy about the whole thing, but like, I mean, I've, been sort of on, I think, a sort of a spiritual journey throughout a lot of my life, part of which started with this kind of adventure that around the time I was 19, I had a buddy of mine take me out to Kinky Friedman's ranch, and it was after Katrina. It's probably 07, and there was a guy named the Reverend Goat living out at Kinky's house, and the Reverend Goat was a Cherokee shaman, but he and Kinky had been on tour with Bob Dylan on the Rolling Thunder Review in like 75, and the Goat was just the ultimate character, dude. I mean, he was like a street preacher and like I said, a shaman, and so he kind of roped me into moving him back to New Orleans. And when I did get back, got him back down there, he had been called back to go play with Dr. John at the House of Blues and at Voodoo Fest and stuff. So I got to meet Dr. John and wound up hanging around Mac, as those kind of years passed me by. And just in that little period, it was like, I found myself just running around with all these like medicine men and stuff like that down in New Orleans. And so the mention of like, down in Louisiana chasing that voodoo thing, and then the woman up in Memphis. I mean, some of it's speaking to my personal experiences. Some of it's kind of touching on just kind of like a bit more fictional references to stuff that friends of mine had happening with them. But so musically speaking, the guys I was jamming with were kind of, doing some country, some blues stuff, but some of my favorite stuff we were doing was just like real swampy, bluesy, funky, kind of low down groove type stuff. And so I wanted to write an original song that sort of captured that feel. And so I just, started kind of telling that story a little bit, some of those stories, and I took it over to Chad. And I just had this like 1-4-5, like, kind of standard blues change that I'd started writing it in, and Chad helped me kind of push it out of the box a little bit and kind of rework it's still blues, but it's kind of a bit more bastardized version of the blues. It's not, it's not just straightforward, and helped me tinker with the words a little bit, put in a bridge, and so, yeah, that was, Chad really helped me make it what it was. And then he's playing that slide guitar on there, that, signature slide sound. But yeah, I was just trying to kind of tell some of those stories in a kind of neat and tidy little box and just put some of that funk on it that we were working up with those guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, like it really ties back into, some of those old mythical kind of where the blues was born kind of thing. I can't remember. I guess it's like that Blind Lemon Jefferson song about, I'm paraphrasing here and I'll mess up the line, but like the blues came bucking on a mule into Texas or whatever that line is. Like it feels like that kind of like there's all those old stories of how the
right.
blues was born. And of course, like we're talking about a lot of the Mississippi Delta stuff. And as far as it getting from there into all these other places, as far as it going to New Orleans and
Right.
and being like, transforming into something else there. And then of course you mentioned Memphis, and, we can mention Dallas and Chicago and all these places. I really do love like that kind of, there's a little bit of that callback and feel.
Yeah, man.
So
sure.
yeah, that's crazy. Like you hanging out with all these like shaman and just meeting them via Kinky Friedman's ranch.
Yeah, man, that was a wild period of my life. I mean, the kids I grew up with were going to college and, doing normal stuff. And I was out there being a gypsy with some serious characters, and that, that definitely was an interesting time. And really helped, shape the course of my, artistic life and spiritual life and informed the direction I would, wind up going in through trial and error, I think. But yeah, for sure. I guess I hadn't thought that much about it, but you're talking about like, the blues came bucking in on a mule, or it's almost like the storyline of the song is almost like the personification of like the spirit of the blues. It's tying together Texas and New Orleans and Memphis and the whole Delta. And, so yeah. I think it definitely captures that, that soul and that spirit of the blues for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like, as far as like, a mood.
Yeah.
Like it like within a couple of seconds, you just know what's going to happen there. And then of course you mentioned the slide. Once all that kind of starts getting in, I guess it's like a little bit later in the song as far as when it really kicks in and you're on that ride. It's such a great damn song. You mentioned Colin. Like I've met him a couple times. He probably does not remember me, but like I've seen him play obviously with Charlie a bunch, but I guess like the first time I saw him play here in Lubbock was with Sons of Fathers. He was playing with those guys, and that's like the first time I guess like I first saw him as far as like, yeah, this guy plays literally everything.
Dude, he's a brilliant dude, man. He really is. Interesting cat. And it's funny because, he's his family goes back in New Braunfels where I'm from. And, we figured out at some point, I mean, I've only met him in the past couple of years. I met him through Charlie, and like I've known Charlie since way back, and that's a whole different story. He and I met up in Northern California years ago, but when I set out to make this record and everything, Charlie was like, "Yeah, man, you should definitely get Colin to play on that stuff." Like, just really, I think what Colin does musically can, take any band to sort of a different level. But yeah, he was, he played with Paul Cawthon. I mean, he played with Ian Moore for years on the road. He's got great stories about that. Played with Raul Malo. He played in Bruce Robison's band at some point. He just played with all kinds of different people. But yeah, but we figured out that, his grandfather was a judge here in New Braunfels, and my grandfather was a doctor. And, so it's like we kind of like suspect that they were probably all playing poker together, years ago, just back in the day. So we've got kind of like an old, some family history, just, we speculate about, but, super good dude, man. And he had, almost got his doctorate in and the trumpet. So, I mean, you know, he's just got an incredible amount of insight as far as like just music theory and his knowledge of, you know, the musical world. But so, yeah, you know, like there's, right. So when the band kicks in on that tune, you know, Colin's on the, you know, playing the organ and B3 through the Leslie, and we've got Josh Blue on drums, Sterling Finley on the bass, and another old friend of mine, Larry Cheney, on playing the second electric guitar. And yeah, man, it's just when it all kicks in, it's like in the studio when it was happening, I was like, oh man, yeah, felt it. It's cool.
Yeah. The you mentioned Bruce, obviously, and Bruce, you know, produced this record, and Bruce always has his like go-to musicians that he calls upon as far as the next waltz or any of these projects. Obviously, you're picking from your cast, your bag of people. What was it, I guess, like as far as knowing like where you needed to go, what direction, who do you needed to call upon, given the given song or given the what you needed out of a song? What was it like, I guess, like going through that roster, maybe having some of those conversations with Bruce as far as who would maybe work best here and not necessarily there? Or like what was
Sure.
kind of like that process?
So, yeah, I mean, that was, it just kind of happened organically. I mean, you know, on the last record I did up in Nashville, I had the good pleasure of getting to, you know, going out and meeting like who I just from my own kind of detective work were some of the best musicians up in that city. And so, and I achieved, you know, a cool sound that way, I thought, and I was happy to work with the guys I did. But so coming back to Texas, it was, you know, it was one of those things where, well, the bar is pretty high now, you know, with the Nashville record with Dave Rowe and Kenny Vaughn and Chris Scruggs and so on. So like, it's going to have to be good. Whatever I do now, it's going to have to be, you know, pretty good for it not to have a drop in quality. And so, talking to Bruce, you know, like you said, he has a pretty regular roster of go-to guys, but the thing is too, Bruce has worked with, you know, over his career with most everybody around that's worth working with. So, it was kind of a, you know, a thing of where like he recommended a certain lineup of guys, and then I just was, you know, sort of, was like, yeah, I mean, you know, that would be great. Now, what about, you know, a couple of these guys? And really, I just was trying to go to bat for using as much of my own band as possible, just because, you know, I think there's something to, and like that, you know, part of that is, you know, inspired in part by like the way Charlie, that, you know, cuts his records. He likes to use his own band. And I mean, there's different philosophies about that, where, you know, some people will tell you like, get the best studio musicians you can for the record, and then get the band that you're going to use on the road just to learn the record. And that's one way to go. But, you know, and just, you know, hoping to develop a sound and to, you know, create some sense of loyalty and like, and, you know, hoping for people to feel like they got skin in the game. I wanted to use as many of my own guys as I could too. So, and Bruce was totally open to that. And, you know, lo and behold, the way it went anyway was there's nobody that I had named in, to suggest that he hadn't already worked with anyway. Or, you know, it's like, there's nobody I could bring to the table that wasn't already under the, you know, sphere of influence of Bruce's, you know, world as it stands. So it all worked out pretty good. But so it was kind of a combination, you know, like Josh Blue, who plays all the drums and percussion on the album. That's, you know, he's Bruce's regular drummer and plays on most of the stuff at the Next Waltz anyway. Now, you know, I suggested Larry Cheney who has played on all my records previously and produced a bunch of stuff for me back in the day. And of course, Bruce and Larry done a session before, so Bruce was familiar with him. I suggested using Cullen. Of course, Cullen had played in Bruce's band before, and has been on a bunch of stuff at the Next Waltz, so that was a no-brainer. And so just down the line, but so it was a combination. I mean, he was really gracious and open to whatever I wanted to do, and he also had definite strong opinions about things, but luckily there's nothing I suggested that it was too far away from I think what he had pictured, so it worked out that way.
This episode of New Slang is brought to you by the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Blue Light has long been the heart and soul of the Lubbock singer-songwriter scene and has been a home away from home for some of Texas, Americana, country, and rock and roll's finest over the years. Talk with 99.9% of the songwriters who have come out of Lubbock and the Panhandle at large over the past 20 years, and they'll point to just how integral and necessary the Blue Light is. With live music and touring slowly but surely coming back, spots like the Blue Light are getting back to their usual ways as well. That means music every night of the week. Do you want to see that schedule? Well, I've got a few options for you. 1, go to their socials and give them a follow. That is at Blue Light Live on Twitter, at The Blue Light Live on Instagram, and of course by just searching The Blue Light Live on Facebook. They're consistently posting that week's lineup of shows, as well as those heavy hitters that ought to be on your calendar that are coming up on the horizon. 2, check out bluelightlubbock.com as well. There they have the full schedule, the cover charges, time, any of those specials that may be happening. While there, go check out their merch page. They have a wide range of hats, koozies, hoodies, sweaters, beanies, jackets, and so much more. You can, of course, get all of your merch needs when you go see your favorite band take the stage at Blue Light. Just ask the bartender and they will get you all set. Speaking of which, that's another great way of seeing who's playing there. Just go to the Blue Light. It's at 1806 Buddy Holly Avenue here in Lubbock, Texas. And of course, again, that is bluelightlubbock.com. I'll throw a link into the show notes too. Maybe I'll see you there. Okay, let's get back to the show.
Right. Yeah. I guess I've been privy to being down there one time for a couple of sessions. But even then, like I think it's maybe hard to relay just the vibes of that place. It's not like slick, and it's like everything's in a moment of I guess working. You know what I mean? It's a working studio, so it's not like where you walk into a room and everything's not clutter free, or it's not clutter free. It's not like where I mean, it's in a state of where people are working, and I think that it's worn in and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
How easy is it to like ease in and feel like you're like living there, that it's a comfort zone?
Well, I mean, I guess it's like anything else. I mean, it's all what you make it. I was pretty quickly fairly comfortable, and I mean, it's funny. Like I know what you mean. It's like to describe it the way that place like is on paper doesn't exactly do it justice. You know what I mean? Like like the magic that's there is more than like the physical reality of the place. A lot more. There's a lot happening just as musically that transcends the nuts and bolts of it. I mean, but yeah, it's not like a slick frill, like, place with a lot of frills. It's not without its creature comforts, but yeah, it's a place you go to work. It's got a rustic country kind of low down thing about it that I dug. And I mean, as far as feeling comfortable out there, man, I mean, you know, the main thing was for me personally, like, as, you know, a relatively, you know, young songwriter, dude from Texas, like, just to be in a room with Bruce, you know, once I got acclimated to like being around Bruce, then, you know, then it's all good. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, because Bruce is like, you know, like a mythical creature, or he's like a mythical character in the whole landscape of Texas music at this point. You know, so yeah, I mean, it was, you know, man, you know, it was. I was a little nervous at first, but once you know I got over that, then it was all good, man.
Right.
You know, I love working out there. It was a ball. It was, you know, it felt like I was in a special place every time I went out there. And yeah, I mean, you know, Bruce makes you feel comfortable. He'll, you know,
Yeah.
put on a pot of coffee and you know, and you know, brag on it when he's proud of what we're doing, and if you know, if he feels like something needs to be better, he'll be quick to tell you that too. You know, he doesn't pull any punches, but he was, I mean, you know, it's fun to work with for sure.
Yeah, that's maybe like the analogy right there as far as what the next waltz, the bunker goes, is, yeah, they have a coffee pot, and that coffee pot's probably, you know, it's no frills coffee pot. It's not like, you know, where you're having to push 18 buttons. There's only one kind of coffee you're going to get. And that's, it's all about the functionality of it. Right.
Right.
So, and the thing with Bruce is, you know, you're not going to meet a nicer guy. You're not going to meet someone who's more knowledgeable. But we all know that there's a little bit of that intimidation factor where you're like, this guy's written fucking massive songs and like,
and he's like 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
6'5" anyway, but no, yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. You know, there's the Robison brothers. I mean, you know, there's like, they're like their own, you know, like royal family almost, you know, it's a dynasty is the way you know, I guess I'd describe those guys.
Yeah.
And, yeah, man, you know,
yeah.
I mean,
no, I know what you're saying. Yeah, exactly. As far as like, you know, Charlie and Bruce and, their sister Robin, obviously Kelly. Like, I don't know if like, people know enough about Robin's stuff. Like, I think her stuff's incredible too.
Dude, I saw her so like, right. But also too, she's, you know, one of the owners out there at Devil's Backbone Tavern, right? You know what I'm talking about?
No, I'm not. I'm not familiar on that. No.
Okay. But. So the Devil's Backbone Tavern is this place that, in the past couple of years, Robin Ludwig, Bruce's sister, and there's another lady that is part owner, and I'm not sure who all is partners in the place. It might just be those two. Lady named Abby Road, who also owns Copeland Dance Hall, and I think used to own Lukenbach or something. But so Robin and Abby like revitalized and got the Devil's Backbone Tavern off the ground again. And it's next time you're down in the hill country, Thomas, man, you got to come check that place out. It's the Devil's Backbone is this like, you know, it's like a ridge in the hills outside of between New Braunfels and like Wimberley area, just kind of like on the edge of the hill country down here. And so, you know, there's just a great drive, you know, this road that follows this ridge, and the tavern is this, you know, super kind of rustic old beer joint, but they've brought out, you know, some some great shows they put together in the past, before the shutdown and since. But I mean, like, they had Todd Snyder and Jack Ingram do a song swap, and look at they bring a lot of cool cats down out of Austin and different stuff. But so I went to see Willis Allen Ramsey out there about, I don't know, 2 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you're hip to Willis, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Of course, right. so Willis for me is like, that record he put out in '71 is like, the holy grail of songwriter records. I mean, up there to me, he's up there with Townes Van Zandt and with Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen and all my favorite songwriters. Willis is right up there with those guys, and that album in particular is as good as anything I think anybody's done for my money. But so sold out show out there at Devil's Backbone, about 200 people, 300 people. I don't know how many people, what the capacity is, but, and Willis by himself with the guitar. But Robin opened up for him. And yeah, she was awesome, dude. Super interesting songs, just cool lady.
Yeah,
for sure.
I would say, for suggestions for listeners, her record, This Tall to Ride, is a great record to check out.
Cool.
As far as like Willis Allen Ramsey goes, I mean, like,
yeah,
there's so many. It should be kind of one of those things where, if you're a songwriter in Texas, it should be like required listening. You should have to own that record and like maybe write a essay on it or something after listening.
Yeah.
Right. Because
right.
that record's just incredible.
Yep.
It's just, I don't know what else to say about it. Like, there's just, I don't even know, like, the other day on Twitter, having a conversation with some friends as far as like, what's your favorite song on that record? And I kept on like replying back, like, and erasing my reply because I would, no, maybe it's not that song. Maybe, no, it's definitely Satin Sheets. No.
Yeah, right.
And
yeah.
like,
yep.
It's hard to like to say like what the best songs on that record. And of course, like, in a lot of ways, like that record, it's very, very easy to, I guess, mythologize, romanticize a record, especially the story with that, as far as like it being his only record. It's very, very easy to fall in line with that and then like kind of be disappointed by the actual product. This is a record that stands up though. Like it meets the story.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, dude. It's timeless. And yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite. Like, I mean, and it's funny too, because I think it's always going to be one of those that for songwriters from this part of the world, yeah, definitely a prerequisite, thing you got to know and study at least at some point a little bit to, like I think I remember reading an article about Lyle Lovett that when he first started out, he was going around to coffee houses or whatever and playing Spider John, and that, that was kind of like, a formative, kind of just part of, the trajectory of his career was, so, I play, like just if I'm just playing, if I'm playing a 3-hour set somewhere, like I do sometimes, I'll play Spider John. I'll play Northeast Texas Women. I'll bust out Satin Sheets sometimes. But dude, Wishbone. I think that's Leon Russell playing piano on Wishbone.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's that era of Texas troubadour, the Willis Allen Ramsey, Guy Clark Townes, Rodney Crowell, like that era of songwriter. I think we all kind of like go back to and think of like that being like that golden era, the golden age. Willie Nelson on top, that kind of deal, right?
Sure. Yeah, Willie
Obviously,
transcends.
yeah. Well, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just, Willie's right in there, but he also kind of transcends the whole thing, I guess. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's
Yeah.
like the figurehead of I think Texas music in general, probably.
Oh,
But
yeah, absolutely. He does transcend and all that stuff, but you
but
know,
but but you're right that
he's
he's
like
right
the
in there.
umbrella in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and yeah,
I guess what I was gonna say though is like, we all kind of always look back at that era. Um, right now, like maybe obviously it's very very hard to compare these contemporary guys, what's happening in Texas right now, to that area. Um, but like I feel like we're in a real nice sweet spot as far as guys who are and women who are doing songs down here in Texas that aren't necessarily trying to be on like Texas country radio, but are still, you know, very, very successful in their own way, carving out their own spots. We've already mentioned Charlie Crockett, but like,
hmm
guys like, and he's not necessarily from Texas, but lives here in Texas now. Jesse Daniel, or like, you got like the Joshua
definitely,
Ray Walkers and the Vincent Neil Emersons. I feel like
yep,
we're all in like this really nice sweet spot as far as um, maybe in a couple of years we'll kind of look back and realize, oh, these guys are like maybe they aren't the Billy Joe Shavers and the Joe Healey's and whatnot, but maybe they live up to some kind of level that we're maybe not given um, full appreciation to right now. What I guess like what's your thoughts as far as kind of being in the middle, being like um, where you're not necessarily thinking about all the accolades that will come, but have you stepped back and thought about like some of your contemporaries and peers all kind of also doing some really really cool stuff right now?
oh yeah, man, yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to see the quality of of the output of all those guys you mentioned, um, who some of those guys are good friends of mine, and I've never met Josh, but I sat around recently and picked a little bit, traded songs with Vincent on a back porch after a gig he played down here someplace, and he and I had never really been in a room together, or we'd met, but we hadn't really ever sat and traded songs and stuff, and that was a cool moment, like um, I got a lot of respect for what he does, um, and yeah, dude, Jesse's, dude, we did a bill in Austin the other day, him and Summer Dean and I, and Jesse's band they were just, they were a powerhouse that night. I mean, but dude, his songwriting and everything, I've got a lot of respect for that, for his stuff. It's I think that the Texas songwriter thing has rubbed off on him some, which I don't know if his record is dropped yet, the whole thing, but it's about to if it hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you get to dig into that a little bit, you'll see what I mean. There's, I think just from my my conversations with him, like I don't think he wants to be boxed in to the Bakersfield thing like solely forever either. He wants to be able to, kind of explore the different sides of country music and stuff like that. And Charlie, of course, is Charlie's poised, I think, to almost do what Willie has done in a way to kind of like bring the sound of the region to the world stage for a different generation. And so I've got infinite respect for his work ethic and just like this is his style, the way he approaches just the music and the whole thing. Man, speaking of Joshua Walker though, I sat and just watched a little bit of film on him last night. Dang, man, that guy can sing and play and write with the best of them, dude. So yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those deals, man, where I was having a conversation recently with a friend of mine named Daniel Johnson, who he played on the record, this one I'm putting out, and he played dobro and pedal steel and but he played with Hank Free for a long time, different stuff, and he was kind of giving me a little bit of a just talking to me about stuff, giving me some perspective on things, and it's like one of those things where when you set out to honor the craft of what guys like Billy Joe Shaver and Townes Van Zandt and guys like that have done, it's like, before you realize it, like you're doing it, and you may not realize it. I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is like, it's hard to step back and see where you fit into the grand scheme of things. And so, I think, all us young guys, whatever, are just trying our best to pay homage to those cats that have come before us. But there is a void that needs to be filled. So, I think somebody's got to do it. And so I think we're all just trying to do our part to honor that craft, that tradition of the Texas songwriter guys. And, I guess time will tell, how good a job we've done at it.
Right.
I want to break one more time to talk about our pals over at Desert Door and offer up a quick Thomas Mooney's cocktail minute. As I've said probably 100 times by now, by no means am I a seasoned mixologist or bartender, but these have been some of my Desert Door go-tos. For starters, let's just go with the tried and true ranch water. Pop the top off the Topo Chico, take a good swig, now pour in some Desert Door, and top it off by throwing in a few lime wedges. Never fails. This one, it's so simple it probably doesn't even count, but again, pretty foolproof. Do the exact same thing, but get you a Mexican Coca-Cola. I guess you can go with a regular one, but you're really cutting yourself short if you don't opt for the Mexican import variety. All right, here's the change-up you've been waiting for. Desert Door Sangria. This one is prime for when you have company coming over and you aren't wanting to just be over there making 6 different drinks at a time. What you'll need is some Desert Door, obviously, a bottle of red wine, honey, boiling water, apple cider vinegar, some cinnamon sticks, a couple of apples, and some thyme sprigs. I know, that may sound intimidating, but trust me, it's worth the prep, and honestly, it's pretty easy. For starters, get you a punch bowl, add that honey, those cinnamon sticks, and the boiling water together. Now you're going to want to stir that all up and let it cool down for about an hour or so. Remember, patience is a virtue. Once that's done, add some Desert Door and stir vigorously. Now add the wine, the cider, and the vinegar, and continue stirring until it's equally mixed. Now slice those apples up and toss them in. Put in those thyme sprigs as well. Now you can pour that over some ice and you have a mighty fine sangria. Chef's kiss. Anyway, those have been some of my favorite go-tos as of late. And remember, Desert Door is as versatile as vodka and more refined, smooth, complex, and intriguing than tequila. It's rich and balanced, and whether you decide to keep it simple or want to experiment, Desert Door is that perfect Texas spirit. There's plenty more recipes over at desertdoor.com as well. Check out the show notes for a link. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, the Charlie's work ethic, as you mentioned there. I mean, he's making up for lost time when it comes to putting out records, and what's amazing is I think we've kind of gotten in. I don't know, maybe we haven't gotten into this, but we've gotten into maybe a little bit of a thing where you kind of eke out as much out of a record, you wring out as much life out of a record when you release one, because clearly you can make a record at any point now without having a label and all that kind of stuff, but obviously, like cutting a record is expensive, and it's not necessarily like back in, the 60s or 70s where these guys are putting out 2 records a year or like 2 records every 18 months kind of deal. And they're kind of in that spot where, like, not necessarily privileged, but they have like the luxury of being able to, if you look at like Willie's catalog, there's Willie Nelson sings Christofferson, so he's got like just Christofferson songs on a record, and having the ability to do a bunch of stuff outside of maybe like as far as the catalog goes. What my entire point is that Charlie's kind of like, even at that, still flipped it, where he's putting out so many records and still maintaining a vision throughout without it feeling like, oh, well, half of these songs didn't need to be cut. You never really feel that, where it's like, should he have just put all this effort into one record or anything like that? You never really feel that. And like he's doing a whole lot of really, really cool stuff. I think like him and maybe not at the same rate of record releases, but are still releasing a bunch of records, Mike and the Moon Pies. And they've got a new one coming pretty soon too. So I don't know. It's interesting to see how I think we've put a whole lot of pressure on the record as far as like, again, wringing every little ounce of life out of it over a couple of years and all that kind of stuff. If you're releasing singles and like, I'm gonna release 5 singles out of this, and whatever all that kind of stuff goes. Maybe you don't have to do that. I don't know. I'm just rambling on here.
No, I hear you loud and clear. I mean, there's, there again, it's one of those things that, there's different philosophies on, I guess, Charlie records and releases records at a feverish pace, but it never, like you said, there's never a lack of quality. It's always, and the quality actually it seems to be getting better as time goes on. And that was something he impressed upon me a couple of years ago. It was like, man, just like make good music and put it out and keep playing. Like, just, that's what you do. You just, like over and over, just keep doing it. So, I think he's really kind of set a standard, or, he has a savvy from the time from playing on the streets on up that, and he and I met, I was mentioned earlier, but just, to kind of talk a little bit more about it. He and I met a few years back. It was probably like 7 years ago now, or something like that, up in Northern California. And he was just about to record a Stolen Gem, which was like, this is way early in relative to his whole recording career, I guess. And but from the very first time I heard him and saw him, like he's been the same guy, man. Just, like he could always get people moving, and just had a spark, and had a look, and had a sound, and it's evolved, but he's stuck to his guns, really. And but I think, not to overstate it, but all those other guys we're talking about, Josh and Vincent and me, and there's others. I think that Charlie has done a lot to kind of inspire the rest of us. That you can, there's a way to do it, and everybody's going to kind of take their own approach at it, and you know, maintain their own thing. But as far as like, you know, setting a bar, and you know, yeah, but you know, you definitely want to get all the mileage you can out of every record you put out, and, you know, and hopefully, you know, be able to amass enough material, you know, and to me, I want to, you know, I like writing songs. So I've, you know, up to this point have put out all original material, that's something, you know, that Charlie's been like, man, you know, you could cut one of those town songs you like to do, or, you know, different stuff like that. So there's,
right.
Which is a, you know, like you're saying, that kind of approach that Willie and, you know, even Ray Charles and Johnny Cash, I mean, all those guys sang, Waylon, all those guys sang other people's songs. And so that's something that I may consider in the future doing. But yeah, Mike and the Moon Pies, man, I love what they're doing too. You know, they really worked up from, you know, I mean, I don't know them personally, or I'm not as close to their story, but I know that they kind of came up out of the honky tonks in Austin, and, you know, have built what they do up, and they, you know, they just keep putting out good records, and that's what it's all about, man. You know, just
yeah,
just, you know, I read something at some point, that something to the effect that, like, you know, that a high volume of creative output is, you know, maybe like more a capitalist philosophy than it is a creative philosophy, or something to that effect, whatever. I mean, but if you can maintain quality creativity and keep doing it, and, you know, and be able to build up what you're doing to a point where it's also, you know, lucrative and successful, I mean, you know, more power to you, man.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
The thing that, as you mentioned with Charlie, as far as like, you know, cutting other people's songs, that is very much like the tie to Willie Nelson. You know, I've had some buddies who have had, you know, where they've cut someone else's song and caught a little flack, or been hesitant because they think they were going to catch flack from an audience or something like that. And, you know, I've always gone back and told them, you know, Willie Nelson is maybe like the most identifiable singer-songwriter in the state of Texas. There's a culture and like a, you know, a level of songwriting, craftsmanship with every song that Willie's ever written. And maybe his most known songs are all covers. So like, don't be too proud necessarily to think that, like, you know, you can't cut someone else's song, because I mean, if Willie Nelson can cut another person's song, and again, like, I go back to, like, yeah, they've had some, like, you know, a little bit more bandwidth that they had to fill up, because they have that luxury of, if you're on a record label, you know, and it's on the company's dime as far as like putting out records go, maybe there's a little bit to that, but still, I mean, I guess, like, Fred Rose who wrote Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain, or like,
oh man, I'm not sure. Probably, yeah.
You know, Always on My Mind. I don't know who wrote that, but like, that's a cover. You know, like, there's
sure. Whiskey Rivers is, I think, a Johnny Bush song.
Right? Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
You know, yeah. There's just, you know, classics. I mean, you know, Willie definitely didn't write Blue Skies, and that's one of my favorite cuts of his. I mean, yeah. I mean, he's, you know, dude, I really like his Frank Sinatra album he put out recently. You know,
right?
Dude, you know, he does. So yeah, I think there's definitely something to that, man. I mean, you know, he was, if I'm not mistaken, Willie was a staff writer, or, you know, he was a Nashville songwriter. And so it's not like he doesn't have the chops to write enough material for himself to record and perform. But even still, he chose to, and probably, you know, very wisely, to cut other people's songs because people like that stuff. You know, people, I mean, that's one of those things. Yeah. It's easy to be prideful as a songwriter to say, okay, well, I'm only going to cut my, you know, I'm only going to write and record, you know, I'm only going to record and perform my own material. But that is very limiting. And I mean, I was in Green Hall when first time I heard Charlie do Jamestown Ferry live, and dude, everybody in the room was singing, and you know, because somewhere in the back of their mind, they remember that from back when. And so, yeah, it's a, you know, there again, there's people are going to have all sorts of different philosophies on it. And I know great songwriters who make the argument that, you know, there's no reason to sing other people's songs if you got your own songs. But, you know, it's not all about you. It doesn't, you know, like, you know, regardless of how fascinating one person's story is or the stories that they can make up, you know, you're probably selling yourself short to some extent if you're not willing to sing stuff that people know and love. And so, yeah, that's an age old kind of debate there, but yeah, I mean, if Willie can sing Johnny Bush, and if Waylon can sing Billy Joe, and you know,
yeah. It's all like time and place, right? I mean, like,
it's
the, you know, if you're looking for a record that you're very passionate about, and it's like, you know, you want it to be that singular vision, absolutely, you need to like be writing those songs. But you know, if it's one of those things where maybe the record's not as much of a conceptual record, or whatever the case, it's okay to, like, you know, put in one of those other songs.
Dude, if you're struck with a fit of inspiration and you've written an album worth of incredible original material, by all means record it, perform it, but don't be too proud to, at some point in your, you know, in your life, to you know, pay homage to you know, all the great songwriters and great songs that exist already. Yeah.
To transition a little bit, we've talked a little bit about, you know, working with Bruce as far as, like, you know, cutting on tape. You have to slow down because you can't. It is just part of the process. As far as, like, you can't do all the parts in a day or 3 days or something like that. You have to slow down as far as the recording process goes, and that helps you in a lot of ways understand the song more. You have to think about it all more, all that kind of stuff as far as slowing down goes. Have you been able to, I guess, apply that to songwriting as well? Because I know, like, it's easy to kind of get frustrated and trying to, like, oh, I need to finish this. Have you been able to apply that to songwriting in a way where it's like, you know, this doesn't have to be finished this afternoon? Because I think we can all get to that point of, like, this task needs to be done now.
That's a good question, man. You know, it's so, yeah, I mean, has the recording process informed my songwriting process? Probably, you know, sort of. Yeah, I mean, just, you know, just for instance, like yesterday, I started kind of writing something in my, just mentally, I was kind of coming up with some lines. And so right before we sat down here to talk this afternoon, I started kind of jotting down some of these verses that I had on my mind. And so, I mean, I think it's definitely important to give yourself the time that it requires to complete a thought or a song, or, you know, whatever it is you're working on. Now, oftentimes it's been my experience that I kind of get like, I'll get struck with these moments occasionally where it's, you know, or otherwise I give myself the space to do it. Like, you know, the space and time to properly sit down and start and finish something. And, you know, it's like when I have the right pen, a good, you know, a clean piece of paper and a cup of coffee, and I'm at my desk and I have 30 minutes and it's like the right time of morning. And, you know, and if I do that, if I set myself up for that, oftentimes I'll be able to sit down and complete the idea from start to finish. And so there's different factors that, you know, kind of contribute to your ability to finish something in one sitting. But that's not to say that if the idea or, you know, the song starts in a different way where you're not near paper or you don't have the whole half hour to an hour or however long it would take you to finish it, that you shouldn't still, you know, pay attention to that idea and then, you know, take the time to finish it later. So it's, yeah, I mean, every song is different, and, you know, like, yeah, it's one of those things that, you know, like I've gotten to where some of the songs that I've written lately, whereas ordinarily or early in my writing, I would usually sit down with the guitar and write with the guitar and write words, music at the same time. I've gotten to where, you know, I like to write the lyrics. And once I get the lyrics, then I can just, you know, then I can come up with some words. Sometimes I get struck with a line in particular, like in a conversation, or just, you know, there's like some idea that you know, comes to me that, like, I realize I need to write a whole song around this line. So it's always different, but I think regardless of any of it, working on this album with Bruce out there in the studio and the way that we recorded and the approach that we took to these songs will inevitably inform the way that I write and record in the future.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right. You, I chuckle a little bit because you're like, you know, having the right things, having that cup of coffee, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The thing that, like, I go, oh, I know exactly that is you said the right pin. I think like people maybe underestimate the power of having a pin that like is your favorite pin.
Oh, dude, I'm there with you, man. Yeah. I like these Pilot Precise V5 extra fine rolling ball. You know, it's almost like a little marker, but it's got a ball in it, and it's just the way it almost writes like a fountain pen or something. But it, yeah, and like no, I like to write in a composition book. You know, like the black and white flecked covered comp book, from like chemistry class. You know,
right? Yeah,
but
what I use is these Uniball Signo 207s. There are ones that are like extra fine that are even better. I don't have one on my desk right now, but yeah, those are like my go-to because I just feel like they just, I don't know, they're just way better for me.
Well, I just wrote that down. I just wrote that down with my Pilot Precise V5 Uniball Signo 207s. I'm gonna have to get some.
Yeah. Now this is going to be really insider. I don't know if we're going to connect on this or not. Are you left-handed or right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Okay. Well, I'm left-handed, and
nice.
Another point on this is that like these like for me, and I've told this is super boring, but you know when you're writing right-handed, you're like pulling the pen, so like the ink doesn't like jam up on you. When you're left-handed, you're like pushing it, and these are like the one pins that I don't ever have problems with. So,
I got you.
And then I don't end up with any ink smears on my hand either.
I was gonna ask about that. Yeah, if that's a problem with the ink, getting the ink on your palm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned the just allowing yourself the time, the space to be in the moment. That I think
Mm-hmm.
that's like, something super key to it all is you know, every song can come different, and yeah, you can write in these different spaces, but sometimes just having kind of the setup is
Yeah.
important to where you're not having to worry about all the other stuff. Maybe like, not to make it into science or anything like that or math, but sometimes having the right conditions
Mm-hmm.
allows yourself to like not even be thinking about anything other than
Yeah.
the task at hand, which is
Yeah.
the song.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
Yep. I mean, I agree. It's rather than waiting to be struck by inspiration and then having to scramble to like find the materials to record the idea. If you create a time and space where the object of that said time and space is to create, whether or not you come up with anything, then you've at least created the proper conditions to allow it to happen. And if you do that on a regular basis and you have a kind of like method, I think the more likely you are to come up with something that's worth keeping.
right.
It's like I heard somebody, a songwriter that was lecturing songwriters on songwriting recently, saying like the only way to write something is to be writing. If you're not writing, you're not going to come up with anything. So I mean, yeah.
Well, I think it's so early on in people's careers, because you've never done it before. It's very, very easy to just be like inspired to write about everything because it's all fresh and new.
Right.
And you kind of fall in line with that thinking where, if I need to be inspired by something and, it needs to be something big and bold and powerful, emotional, whatever the case. And, that's going to hit me. And that's when I write a song. And because that's happens so often when you're first starting out. But there's something to that whole thing where, that's not always going to work. That's not always going to happen. And having that little bit of structure, because I know, like, for me, like, I always have problems starting stuff, and
sure,
it's just because you're like, you procrastinate about doing it. And then 5 minutes into it, you like forgot how you even started. So it doesn't even, like, once you start getting that ball rolling, it's you can get lost in what you're working on. And that's where a lot of magic and a lot of stories come from, is like once you get past the initial stages of boredom.
Yeah.
So
if you can get used to like kicking yourself away from the shore of reality into the creative process, then you're more likely to do it more often, and inevitably you'll be able to create more often and produce more and better quality material, hopefully. Whether that's with songwriting or with writing of any kind or any kind of creative sort of task.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good spot to end it on right there. It's been great talking with you this afternoon.
Man, it's my pleasure, Thomas. I appreciate you having me on and taking the time to talk about all this stuff.
All right, that is it for this one right here. Be sure to check out Dallas Burrow by Dallas Burrow, out this Friday, July 23rd. Go stop on over and visit our presenting partners, Desert Door and the Blue Light Live. And yeah, I'll see y'all later this week for another episode.